Hello, welcome to Cable's Conquests. I'm your host, Archie Cable, and we're here to talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol.
The name's Cable. Remember it.
Hello, welcome back to Cable's Conquests. I'm your host, Archie Cable, and I am joined once again by my faithful assistant, Curtis Hodgson.
Hello, thanks for having me back. You did replace me for an episode, and I was absolutely devastated. I'd love to tell the listeners that I wasn't warned, and I had to find out, like the rest of you, that Archie had replaced me. But no, he did. I did see that one coming. But no, it's great to be back. Hi, Archie. Hi, everyone.
Yes, so you're back, and you're back for a special episode. So this one is going to be slightly different. We're not doing a full episode in this one, but don't worry, you will get the full content. But the reason we're not doing it is because this episode is going to be the prequel to our World Team Championships WTC episode. So I am jetting off to Copenhagen in a week's time at the time of recording. In fact, today's recording is list submission day. So it's a big day all round.
We've scheduled it for today to do the recording because, we didn't want you, Archie, going back on any of your decisions, anything you talk about, anything that comes out of our discussion where you go, oh, whoopsie. Nope, this is it. Lists are locked. You've submitted.
List is locked. So what we're going to do today in today's episode is we are going to cover the first kind of section of our usual episode. We're going to cover the roster building, so we'll talk about the rosters. So for those of you listening, we'll hopefully get this out before WTC. You might get some tips on how to play against me.
There we go.
There's some incentive for you to listen on. And then what we will do is after WTC, we'll come back, we'll record another episode, and we will tell you all about how I got on across, I think it's 6 games in the WTC, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about it. Absolutely gutted I couldn't join and be there. It's a shame. Maybe next year, WTC 25, we'll have a Cables Conquest team and we'll travel out. But yeah, it's great that you've been able to join another team. There's lots of familiar faces there. There's going to be so much competition. I've been absolutely scooping up all the pre-WTC content from all the other podcasts and channels and videos. And just as a spectator, I'm absolutely buzzing to follow along.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited to go. So before we get into details of what I'm going to be doing, let me outline what WTC is for those who don't know. So the World Team Championships is a Marvel Crisis Protocol event that takes place in Copenhagen. And the idea is it's meant to be this world international tournament to bring together loads of different MCP communities. It is made up of teams of 5, so it is a team event, hence the name. And for this event, there are 42 teams.
Wow, that's incredible. 42
teams of 5, that's 210 players. That's a lot of MCP.
That is. So what restrictions are there? What's unique about it being a team event? Obviously, we've covered team events in the past. You went over to the UK nations, but is there anything slightly different about the WTC in this respect?
So I think that the rounds happen in the same way as usual. I think it's 5 or 6 rounds we have.
6 rounds this year.
6 rounds this year. Yes, 6 rounds because of the number of teams we have. You need to have an absolute winner. Teams of 5, but it's not Highlander. So recall we had a Highlander team event in a few episodes ago where there's no crossover between characters, team tactics, or crises cards.
Right.
In WTC, there's only restrictions on crossovers between characters. So you can't have duplicate characters, but you can take as many of the same tactics cards and crisis cards as you want.
So it poses a slightly different challenge to some of those other team events where there is, complete restriction, complete, Highlander, but actually where, as spectators, but also as players and to enjoy the game, you want to see the most variance. It's probably in those characters. So actually restricting those characters across the teams means each team has 50 unique character cards. That's really interesting. That's what's spicy and that's what people want to see.
Yeah, and I also actually think, particularly with the tactics card, well, tactics and crisis cards now, is AMG have recently restricted a lot more. So I think this year particularly, not having those restrictions across your team probably don't make as big a difference because most of the cards that are taken are either affiliated or tacked on to a character.
Oh, okay. So actually, you will see a lot of unique cards.
Yeah. So actually, I think we will still have quite a lot of variants. Yeah, so I should say this is taking place in Copenhagen in Denmark, and basically it's in a hotel right by the airport. So we pay for our ticket. It's quite an expensive ticket, but it basically covers everything. It covers the games, the accommodation, the food, not drinks and snacks, but it covers all our meals. So basically you can go to Copenhagen and never leave the airport hotel, essentially, if you want to.
It's amazing, isn't it? I'm going for a weekend away to Denmark. Oh, how was Denmark? It's a beautiful country. It's like, oh no, I didn't see Denmark actually. But the airport in Copenhagen was lovely.
Yeah, so to try and avoid this issue, I'm going on the Thursday with a few other, not my team, but some of the other guys from the London community, just so that we have a couple of days actually to see Copenhagen before we lock ourselves in for the weekend.
I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. You want to be able to say that you've been there.
Yeah.
Also, I think you travel on the Thursday. It's not a long flight from London, so hopefully relatively straightforward for you. But give you a day to sort of settle in, give you a day to do a bit of exploring before you start rolling some dice. And you know what? You can do 8-9 hours of touristing. You still get a couple of pickup games in the evening. So it's just more time for MCP.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be there bright and early on the Friday, so we'll be picking up some games. So I'm hoping to get a whole heap of games in over the weekend. I'm very excited.
I'd like you to come back and say that you've had 15 games over the weekend.
Yeah, that would be good. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility by any stretch.
No, I don't think it is. I think 6 of them are obviously as part of the tournament, but you'll be surprised. I imagine people will be wanting to play. MCP is a fast game as well. There might be a few ultimate encounters that people want to get stuck into. These types of events where people are coming together and they accommodate for having space for people to meet and they make the tables available for you. It's absolutely fantastic because it means you can get to know a lot of the other teams before you even go into the event. With the pairing process requiring you to communicate with the other team, actually having those icebreakers beforehand and getting those practice games in. Also, it means that your weekend, like the enjoyment, isn't dependent on those 6 probably fairly competitive games, which you're there for fun, but dice be dice. Things might not go your way. You get back on that flight and you're like, oh my gosh, I've had 6 miserable games.
Yeah.
But actually, you've had a weekend of all these other games as well, and all this other fun and all this other socializing. So yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really looking forward to it because that's the thing is WTC is a competitive event, and I think it will be highly competitive among the 6 games. But yeah, there's so much else going on around the event that like the pickup games will be so easy because we don't have to go anywhere for dinner. Like they'll bring dinner to us. We don't have to. We could sit at the tables all weekend and just play. Like, yeah, it's going to be great.
I just picturing you like food all down you. You've not slept.
Yeah.
And you're just rolling dice. And even when dice aren't in your hand, you're rolling dice.
Yeah,
your body is just so used to it by now.
Yeah, I'm going to come back and have like withdrawal symptoms. I'll just be going around like rolling phantom dice.
You'll go into work the next day and you'll see something that's like a cube or it has 8 sides, and you'll just pick it up and you'll roll it across someone's desk and they'll be like, sorry, Archie, is everything okay? Oh yeah, no, don't mind me. Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm fine.
If you are listening and you see Archie and it's the Friday or whenever, do shout him, do drag him down, do give him that pickup game. I would like to see him hit the 15.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good call out. So, shall we move on to talking about the teams?
Absolutely. Go on. So how did you get called up to the WTC? If I remember rightly, you weren't originally part of like a UK team as such. I remember when it was all being announced, you were uncertain about whether October, so far in the future, you might be able to go. And then all of a sudden, I get this message, tickets booked. I'm on the plane. I got the call up.
Yeah. So basically what happened was our London community were really on it. Norbert leading the charge. Everyone got really on it with the teams. I think there are something like 3 or 4 London teams, or at least with London representation. But yeah, that was way too far in advance for me to be able to say, yeah, I can go to this. However, after UK Nations, I had an absolute blast. Not only, there's the joy of winning the event. Spoilers of the previous episode. If you haven't listened to it already, please go back and listen to it.
Did win the event, didn't you? Yeah.
but also I just loved the whole weekend, and I loved that weekend vibe, exactly what we were just describing. So after Nations, I dropped Norbert a message saying, if there are any dropouts in any of the teams, let me know, because I'd love to go. And as it happened, there were dropouts in one of the Danish teams. So I am Danish for the weekend, playing for Team Denmark Venom is our team name.
Excellent. How is your Danish? Have you been practicing?
I wish I could say I have. I'm very sorry to my team in advance, and I actually apologized to them immediately after joining the Facebook like messenger group, saying my Danish is really bad. Non-existent, I think, was the word I used. Yeah,
non-existent. It's classic British imperialism. Yeah. Everyone is really, really good at English, and they'll be so accommodating and so polite to you, I imagine, that it won't be a problem.
Yeah, they've been very good, just purely speaking in English on the chat now. Because actually our team, and we'll come on to our full team in a moment, but our team is actually made up of 2 Londoners, because they had 2 dropouts, unfortunately. So it's actually, we're kind of muscling our way in, unfortunately, for the Danes.
It's a historic alliance, from the ages. We were the 2 countries in Europe that managed to hold on to our own currency.
Yeah.
So so much in common. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. So our team is Team Denmark Venom. I think there are a few Danish teams, and they all have kind of Team Denmark something.
Well, you'll be fighting on home turf. It's good that you're going there a day early, so you can sort of get a feel for the place and assimilate.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. I can get lay of the land. This is home advantage for me now, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. People are going to start wondering if you start, cracking under the pressure because of the home crowd cheering and stuff.
Yeah,
they're cheering for you, Archie, now.
Yeah, that's true. I've got to adapt to that. So I'll just run through the list of names, and then we can talk a little bit about our rosters. I won't go into too much detail about their rosters because, spoilers and all that. Though they've been very kind and said I can talk about their rosters on air before WTC. So I have checked that it was okay before outing them on the podcast.
Well, hopefully it's all list locked now anyway, and by the time this comes out, I expect most rosters will be available anyway, won't they, on Longshanks?
Yeah, I think so.
This is just the advantage of getting our 2 pence on it, so it's whether people value our insight.
Yes, very true.
Or not.
Yeah, very true. So the team is made up of Stefan, who is our glorious leader for this campaign, and then we have Niels and Kasper, who are the 2 other Danish guys, and then it's myself and Finley, who is, I'm not sure how new a player he is, but he's played plenty of games now, but he's newer to the London scene. I think I didn't meet him, or we've never crossed paths in real life, so we will meet for the first time in Copenhagen.
I've met Finley a few times. Him and his brother are they've been playing a lot. They're pretty decent players. In fact, I've actually, at time of recording, I've got a TTS game lined up against Finley tomorrow, where I'm sure hopefully he'll be practicing his WTC roster against me.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. So with that in mind, we'll just quickly touch on each of the rosters before we go into a deep dive of mine. So let's start with our captain. Now, our captain has taken something very close to my heart. He is taking Spider Foes.
I'm very pleased Team Denmark Venom has a Spider Foes in it, because it's your favourite.
And it was actually funny because when Finley and I first joined the Messenger, we came in late. At that stage, all 5 of us were considering playing Spider Foes.
Of course, yeah. When I've played Finley, I've played against his Spider Foes and his Criminal Syndicate with lots of Spider Foes in it. So, wow, so all 5 of you like chomping at the bit for a bit of Doc Ock.
Yeah, our captain ended up being like, I'm going to take this. No, I joke. We all decided separately that we wanted to take something different. And he was like, okay,
It's the classic. You all want the same thing, so you all think none of you can get it. So you all make a decision on something else, and then it ends up that no one has it. Great. Well, I'm glad the captain has taken one for the team, gone with Spider Foes.
I mean, personally, I was happy to play Spider Foes, but I wasn't dead keen because I played a lot of Spider Foes recently, so I wanted to try something else out.
Of course. So who's in his roster? Give us a bit of a flavour to the style of Spider Foes that Stefan will be bringing.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of Spider Foes, which is good to see. A pretty themey list, I think, for Spider Foes. He is going to be predominantly led by Doc Ock, Sinister Scientist himself. However, he has got an interesting Kingpin splash. Well, not a splash because he's affiliated, a Kingpin in there. So maybe there might be the opportunity to pivot to Criminals, because obviously there's a lot of crossover between the characters in Spider-Foes and Criminals. And then, yeah, he's got a pretty classic Spider-Foes. Good to see Mysterio is in the list. My favourite character in the game. Definitely deserve to be in that Spider-Foes roster.
Absolutely. EMAP specialist as well. Really annoying. And probably, is he the only affiliated Mystic threat as well? So seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in this roster, lots of affiliated characters. He does have a Juggernaut splash. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, Juggernaut, to me, he feels like a criminal in himself. He's a big, beefy guy who can take a hit, sit on a point, but also can pick up an extract and really scrummage down on it. Is that the sort of game plan do you think Stefan will be playing? Get on the points, survive out, throw people off them?
Yeah, I think we've talked quite a lot about Spider-Foes before, how they can do multiple things. And I think I tend to lean in for the kind of chip damage attrition team. And I think looking at his roster, Stefan's gone more down the kind of wide play the crises. And actually, I think Juggernaut is a really cool Spider-Foe. I don't own the model, so I'd never considered him. But yeah, I think he could be a really good piece in the Spider-Foes. He's tanky. He likes the leadership because he gets rid of conditions, which are kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Shock and incinerate can mean that he can go down. And just being a tank that can just stand there and take hits is a really good thing. It's what Spider-Foes do. You've got Lizard, you've got Rhino, and now bringing a Juggernaut doing a similar thing.
Completely. Yeah, I feel like when I first looked at this roster, I was thinking, right, he's leaning into the Spider-Foes that plays that sort of like pseudo Hellfire game. He wants to be activating second, whereby his Doc Ock, his Rhino, his Juggernaut, Kingpin, whoever, Lizard can go up to that point, throw someone off it, push someone off it, and then sit on it. Likewise, he's got Black Cat in there for a steal to get the edge on the extract. Got Rhino in there for a steal as well to just do exactly the same. And if he wants to, he can lean into that Kingpin leadership where if it is more of an extract game, they can pass it around. So Rhino can go steal and pass it, and then go be a menace elsewhere. And I agree with you. I think Juggernaut plays into that game really well. The fact that he can get rid of the conditions you mentioned there, but also poison. He hates poison. And then the leadership is doubling down on him, generating power, so he can push himself around the table, knock into people, do that chip damage. And, he usually only gets one attack a turn. So yes, he hates shock. But when you can get 8 dice on it, you get that wild, you're pushing someone off the points, and with Do You Know Who I Am, throwing someone long can just take them out completely out of the game. So yeah, it's a tried and tested playstyle, and I think actually this Spider-Foes team is really good at it. But it could also go down the middle and fight you with Mysterio, Shocker, Electro at the same time. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly. It's a nice Spider-Foes list. It's a good solid Spider-Foes list. Not far off the kind of thing I would play.
Nice one. Right, well, who's next?
So next on the list is Niels, and I might have to pass this one a little bit more over to you because he is playing Apocalypse.
Nice. So this there's not been many opportunities to get this at a competitive event. Really excited that you've got a Servants of Apocalypse in the team.
Yeah, so Niels was actually really late to put anything into. We have a spreadsheet. He was very late to put anything into it, and the reason was because he was waiting to see if his Apocalypse would arrive in time.
So this means it has. That's very good.
So it has. Yep, he's sent some work in progress photos of him painting it up, ready for next week. So
brilliant. Great effort. Well, good luck, Niels. I hope you get it finished. I hope it's looking fantastic on the table.
Yeah.
He's effectively gone for a completely Servants of Apocalypse affiliated team, with the exception of one character. And some really, really interesting pieces in there. He's gone for Iceman. He's gone for Deadpool, Cassandra Nova, Cable, Toad, Beast, Colossus, and Wolverine. So I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on Servants of Apocalypse. It's brand new. I've not sort of seen it a ton on the table, but I feel like, the characters that he's bringing, he's really like doubling down on that conditions game.
Yeah.
And with Apocalypse at the center, who can deal some real hurt, he's got that ability to place friendly characters within 5 closer to him so he can move them around the table. And, all of these models here are either irritating in themselves because they can dish out more of those conditions, whether it's through them being a horseman, like whether they're like the pestilence or the famine one. I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah.
Iceman as well, just like handing out slows, Cable's handing out incinerates, and bleeds coming from Beast and Wolverine. And Wolverine as well, when you can give him loads of extra dice as the horseman, plus
Yeah.
the rerolls from the leadership, like he just becomes a bit of a glass cannon, but he can reliably take out a higher threat model in an activation. So yeah, sounds like he's really leaning into this. But he's got a really interesting flip. He's also with Cable in there, who can be a horseman. He also could play X-Force,
Yes, that's very true.
because so many of these characters are X-Force, and his 10th character, who's not a horseman, is Bishop, and he's bringing a number of X-Force affiliated Team Tactics cards in Cat and Mouse, as well as Preserve the Dream. So it gives Niels a bit of flexibility when Apocalypse, perhaps the threat doesn't work out to bring him.
I think it's that 6 threat leader you could do with a pivot, and I think that you're absolutely spot on there. I think it's a really interesting one, because I think Apocalypse seems to be, you have Apocalypse and you have these kind of smaller characters orbiting Apocalypse doing lots of things, and when that's not gonna work, maybe when it's a bit of a wider crisis or something like that, you can then pivot to this like attrition X-Force where you can kind of go one-on-one against people. And so I think it's going to be really interesting.
I think if the threat is too low for you to double down on your horsemen, because with Apocalypse you want as many horsemen on the table, because Apocalypse is benefiting from those extra superpowers. It's more opportunities to gain the tokens, and therefore more rerolls for your team. So it's a strange one where, as an attrition team, you actually want a really, really high threat, so you can have those pieces. It's tough to pivot into Cable because he's also a 5 threat leader, so it's not like Cable pivoting into Storm, for instance, and having that level of flexibility. But it does at least allow you perhaps have a slightly different game plan. And of course, because he's got so many X-Force affiliated characters, Toad being non-X-Force isn't a problem at all. Beast being a 3 threat non-X-Force isn't a problem at all. And actually, these are characters as well that probably quite enjoy the reroll that you get from X-Force, should you need them, whether it's to try and chase a trigger or an extra little bit of damage. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Niels plays it. He's got my favorite roster out of all 5 of you. Spoilers.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Apocalypse goes generally. I don't know how many Apocalypses will be there, just because of how close to the deadline it is.
Yeah.
And I haven't played against Apocalypse, and because I'm not a big X-Men guy, I don't really know that much about the roster. So I think I'm really excited to see how Niels gets on and how he plays it, because as we said, these are our takes. He could be thinking something completely different.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how many Apocalypses are there. If I had to guess, I don't expect you to see many, apart from for those players that want to play their new shiny toys.
Yes.
And that's just because the character pool it's drawing from are crossing over maybe a number of other factions that teams would prefer to lean into. For instance, X-Men. X-Men is always a popular faction, whether it's played competitively or not. People just love it. A lot of these characters are going to want to be taken in there. Similarly, Brotherhood. Similarly, characters like Toad and Cable can pop up in lots of different teams and be useful. So, an Apocalypse, I'm not sure people are quite sussed out.
Yeah, and spoilers, we don't have any X-Men, which is probably going to be unusual. Like, Apocalypse is our X-Men comic book side of things.
Niels is bringing your mutants.
Exactly.
Nice. Cool. Who's next?
So next up, we have our last native Dane.
Are you not native Dane? I thought.
I am now.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah. I'll get my passport.
Yeah, good.
So this is Casper, and he is taking Asgard. One of these big bad new kids on the block that are getting everyone all in a tiz.
Is he looking to do the BLT, the dreaded Beta Ray Bill, Thor, and Loki, or has he got different ideas of how you play Asgard?
So if I were to guess based on looking at this roster, he has BLT as an option. So this is Thor, Prince of Asgard, Loki, Prince of Lies, and Beta Ray Bill. He's got both Thors in there, I should say. There's a lot of Thors in this roster.
Yeah, there are 3 Thors, aren't there? That's nuts.
But he doesn't have Gamma or Research Station.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'm not sure he's looking to play that, which I respect.
I respect that a lot. Yeah, I can see in here the restricted cards he's gone for are Brace and Patch Up. and he has got a ton of high
Yeah.
threat characters. So he is probably not necessarily looking to be playing 15, but probably knows if his opponent brings 15, he can always match them.
Yes.
So I respect Casper for not going down that route, going down an alternative route, and actually benefiting when his opponent
Yeah.
is going down that route, knowing that he can play that game just as well as they can.
And I think what's interesting about Asgard, and I think what is not talked about so much, or at least not on the channels, there's a lot of talk about this BLT list, but actually Asgard have loads. I think a lot of the old characters are great, like old Thor, since his glow up, is really good. I mean, our friend George has played him so much, so we really know a lot about him.
And he still
And
swears by him, doesn't
yeah.
he? He still says the fact that you can get 3 throws off in a turn plus his spender. Previously, he would love to do a double spender with no matter the cost. Obviously, that's not possible anymore, but still incredibly powerful damage output, largely because of those throws and that movement. Yeah, the original Thor is certainly a really good tool these days.
Yeah, and I think this probably leans a little bit more. I don't know. I would imagine that Mighty Thor would also see the table a lot more as a leader, potentially in this roster, because you're not just going up the middle. You might want to go a bit wider. The crises that Casper is playing are a bit wider than would be this kind of conventional Asgard. And so I wonder how much he will pivot to that leadership. And well, he's got three Asgard leaders in here, so it'll be interesting to see which leadership he favors more than the others.
And I wonder if he's got a plan for different types of crises to bring different types of leaders. When you want to go down the middle and you want a more fighty team, then maybe Loki is your one because he's offering out those rerolls. When you see across the table a team that's going to be handing out stuns and staggers, it's get talked a lot that one of the biggest weaknesses to the hero of Midgard, Thor, is that as soon as you get stun on him, he becomes incredibly less threatening. He can do a lot less. He needs that power generation. Well, that's not a problem if you're not bringing Hero of Midgard, but you bring the old Thor's leadership, who can easily remove those stuns and staggers with the leadership, which is something that people might be trying to bring to tech against Asgard. Well, now Casper has an answer to it. He just leans into that original leadership. And when you've got characters like the new Lady Sif, who I think she's a bit of a boring character, but she's another one of these Asgardians that just does what she does really well. Like, she survives, she can get rerolls into her attacks. There's not much else to say about her. And we all know Beta Ray Bill's been terrorizing the table with how boring he is for months.
And also, I think what's interesting is you can often take someone like 5-threat Thor and the Mighty Thor or Loki, Prince of Lies, and you see what your opponent has across the table. Oh, they've got a couple of staggers. I'll go with OG Thor leadership. Oh, they don't really have conditions. I'll go with Mighty Thor or Loki and just benefit from that kind of more attrition-y reroll game style.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like it.
I think one final thing to comment on is actually this list is really mobile. You've got a couple of characters that have lots of charging. Mighty Thor has a charge, I think. OG Thor definitely has a charge. Lady Sif has a charge. Interesting splash in Malekith, who is extremely mobile, famously.
Absolutely. He has his own tech there. You've also got does Scourge have aggressive as well as Bill having aggressive?
Angela?
Well, Angela, she moves off of her builder. She can get herself a third attack if she dazes characters. She's a long mover with a medium base. So yeah, this is incredibly mobile team, incredibly fast.
So I think it'll be interesting to see. That's something that I think is a little bit slept on in Asgard, is the mobility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so maybe that's something that Casper will lead into.
His second splash is Iron Man, and I wonder if he's thinking, well, all my characters are getting 2 power return. Some of these characters don't use it all. Let's just battery power up a big Helios laser.
Yeah.
And blast
someone off the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's your native Danish contingent. That's luckily you're still affiliated with Denmark by having three players. Your 2 splashes from London. Talk me through what Finley's got.
So we've got our first adopted Dane, and that is Finley, who is taking Cabal. So this is our second big bad in our team.
Oh gosh, I look at this roster and I fear that all 42 teams will have a version of it.
I think so too. And actually, when we were talking about what Finley was going to play. I don't think Finley was too bothered. I think he had a few things. Spider Foes, obviously. He was thinking about Web Warriors. But as we'll get on to mine, there might be some crossover there. But yeah, I think we ended up being like, maybe we should just take a Cabal.
If someone's prepared to play it, I think it's smart. So for the listener, the three dreaded characters are right at the top of his list. It Red Skull, Master of the World, it's Baron Zemo, and it's Thanos. That like 15 threat terror bubble that can kidnap your characters and absolutely tear them a new one, so that you've got none left by round 3, round 4, unless you have a plan for it.
Yeah, and then basically you can add characters as the threat goes up. So you've got Nebula and Bullseye in there that can both come in as twos as really attrition twos.
Yeah.
Nebula under Thanos and Red Skull is just insane damage dealing.
There's no subtlety, is there, in this roster?
No.
When you look at the rest of the characters, Nebula, Killmonger, Corvus, Proxima, Ulik, and then he's brought Winter Soldier just in case Red Skull needs a bodyguard.
Yeah.
But I imagine, again, that'll be very situational because he's wanting those huge dice pool attacks that Thanos can battery charge up.
It's a pretty standard list. And to be honest, I think it's, Cabal should be doing this kind of thing. Cabal should be Route 1, just hammering away at people. There's not a huge amount of subtlety.
I mean, it couldn't be themier, could it? Like, all these characters are so evil. They're not subtle. They are trying to dominate the world. And if they're not dominating the world, they're trying to paint the floor with your blood.
Yeah.
And you know what? Credit to Finley. He's really leaned into it. And it'll be lots of fun for him. It might not be lots of fun for lots of his opponents. But I think in the team process, actually having him, a lot of the other teams having them there, so much of what's important about that pairing process is getting the right person into this team. So it's thinking about, right, who on your team is going to be good against this, but also who does this person want to play? If they, either they're going to guarantee a W for you or get as likely a W for the team as possible. So it's going to be a really interesting part of the pairing process if this type of roster or this blueprint is seen sort of across the 42 teams.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. And I think, I hope that Finley is happy to just lean into his villain arc for this.
I want to hear him cackling, at the table when Thanos kidnaps his first character and Zemo rolls 8 dice from a death decree fully re-rolled and blasts it off the table. Like, I want to hear him cackling like he's just his master plan has come.
Exactly. Lean into it, Finley. Lean into it.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question for Finley, and I hope if he does listen, I hope you get an answer for him. What does he do at 16 threat?
Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. He has Mayor Fiskin here.
Yeah.
So he does clearly have a plan.
He must. Yeah. I mean, assuming if he's going with his secures, his opponent would then be choosing the threat. But if they see that 16 threat, you can't get those 3 characters in.
Yeah.
Is that a weakness for him? So yeah, really interesting to know what his plan is. Does Zemo become a 4 threat character, or do you drop Red Skull and play Black Order?
Yes, that's quite possibly the way you'd go. Interesting that I've just kind of seen, we could do, maybe this is good, maybe it's not, is Red Skull, Thanos, and then Nebula and Bullseye. And just, because they don't really care about the stun. Thanos is immune to stun.
That's exactly what you do, isn't it?
Just have Nebula going ham on people in the middle.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's what you do. Because I think with Nebula's attacks with the extra dice are great.
She re-rolls all of her attack against characters that are on objectives, I think. So she's very similar to Zemo. Yeah.
So she becomes a pseudo Zemo at 2 threat. Yeah. Okay. Ignore me, Finley. You've got a plan at 16 threat.
Or if you didn't, you do now.
Yeah. Excellent. Super. Well, it's nice to get a flavour for all the people in your team. There's a nice mixture of teams there.
Yeah.
It does look like that most of your teammates there are out for blood rather than potentially playing the crisis. So that's really interesting. And then might pose some questions to you about what you're bringing and to the team as a whole. So should we move on and have a little deep dive into your roster?
Let's do it.
You're boring me. If you want to help me nail them, get your team together and let's get started.
So Archie, you know what the rest of your team is bringing. You've had months to prepare. What affiliation are you going with? And talk me through your roster.
Right. So I won't spoil the affiliation, but it will become apparent, and I'll let you guys figure it out. So my characters are She-Hulk, Namor the Submariner, Nick Fury Jr., Agent Venom, the Black Widow, Spectacular Spider-Man, Nick Fury Sr. and the Howling Commandos, Black Widow, Dr. Voodoo, and Black Panther Chosen of Bast.
Ooh.
My team tactics cards are Battlefield Medicine, the S.H.I.E.L.D. Mobile, Sitrep, Eye in the Sky, The Invaders, Prince's Protection, Defensive Prototype, The Initiative, Brace for Impact, and Patch Up. And then my crises, and we'll get on to how much we deliberated over these. Sword Base, Infinity Formula, Mutant Madman for my secures, and Spider Infected, Struggle for the Cube, and Mutant Extremists, target US senators as my extracts.
AKA senators. Right, okay, so what's clear to me is that you're planning to play A-Force.
Yes, I have precisely... Well, actually, I've got...
No, you could. There's enough affiliated characters there, I
because
think.
there's 2 Black Widows.
Ah, yeah, you can't play them
So
both.
I can't play them both. I am playing S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right, okay, nice.
Now, to tell you a bit of the background about why I decided to play S.H.I.E.L.D. was, obviously, we had this debate with Spider Foes, but we've played a team event not long after the Mutant Freaks, which we never actually recorded, and I really enjoyed it. And then they announced the new Spider Foes characters, and so I then went off S.H.I.E.L.D., had enough of them, because I was really excited to play Spider Foes again. And so this is me kind of coming back to S.H.I.E.L.D. So actually, going into this team event, I was like, actually, S.H.I.E.L.D. is up there on lists I want to play with.
Oh, so great. I mean, you've played it in a team format before, so you're familiar with it in that sense. It's characters you want to play.
Yeah.
There's also a few new toys in here, which we'll get onto. But I imagine your thought process for it being in a team event, and I remember at the time, playing in that team event with you, S.H.I.E.L.D. really works in a team event because so many of your characters aren't necessarily desperate to be splashed elsewhere.
Yeah.
And of course, that was pre-rotation, and it was strict Highlander. You weren't fighting people for their team's tactics cards. Obviously, that's not a problem for you here at the WTC, but the principle sort of still works in that a lot of these characters, which are affiliated for you, perhaps aren't necessarily desperately needed to be splashed by other teams. So you've got your pick of the bunch.
Yeah, exactly. I have not had to make any compromises on this roster. The only thing that I considered was taking Toad instead of Black Widow, just because then I would have had a 2-threat that wasn't the same alias as a 4-threat. But Niels with Apocalypse got dibs on that.
And I think in a singles event that, Toad feels like the, quotation marks meta option, given that you've already got a Black Widow in your roster. But I don't think you're missing much in terms of the role that Toad would be playing in this roster when playing 2-threat Black Widow. And actually, for you, the opportunity to play the 2-threat, you don't feel like you're missing out on the 4-threat because they can play a similar role. So you might be looking to have an alternative character. And am I right in saying both Black Widows are affiliated as well?
Both Black Widows are affiliated. So in total, I have 8 affiliated characters and 2 unaffiliated. So 2 splashes.
Right. Okay. So obviously, let's park She-Hulk as a leader there because, as we've joked about, you probably won't be playing A-Force. But you have got 2 other leaders in Nick Fury and Namor.
Yeah.
Overall, what is your game plan and which leadership are you looking to sort of mostly lean into?
So I think the leadership really depends on the threat value and the crises. If I want to take Namor, and I think Namor is a good character for the crisis that I'm playing, I will play Invaders because I think Invaders is a better leadership than Nick Fury's. So the Invaders, for those who don't know, because it's relatively new, is very similar to Miles Morales' leadership for Web Warriors. It is all allied characters can reroll a defense dice every time they take an attack. And additionally, they can reroll skulls if they are within 2 of an allied character.
Okay, so alternative to the Miles Morales, where you need to be contesting an objective, if you're bunched up or you've got a friend nearby, that unlocks the ability for you to reroll skulls. And am I right in saying that is separate from the defensive reroll?
Yes, so if you're rerolling attack dice, for whatever reason, you can reroll skulls if you're close to friends.
Great. So Namor, who he's got his own reroll, hands out a reroll to other people. if he's nearby them, he's also allowing them to reroll skulls.
The main problem with this leadership is it is a tactics card. So it takes up one of your tactics card slots, and S.H.I.E.L.D have some really good tactics cards. So that is another consideration, is if I feel that I need 5 tactics cards that don't include the invaders, I won't take the invaders. However, having said that, I've found the invaders leadership to be really strong, so I tend to lean into it more.
It feels relevant all of the time. I mean, the ability to unlock skulls on rerolls is just great. It changes the maths almost entirely in your favor, which is fantastic. And, you're always going to be rolling defense dice during the game. Even against webs, you might even roll defense dice occasionally. But against most teams, you'll be rolling defense dice. Whereas I suppose with Nick Fury's leadership, which has been out a lot longer, but it very much is dependent on what the score is at the time.
And it's very situational.
So there's a bit of a big brain game
Yeah.
about setting that up to benefit from certain parts of it. And it's an aggressive, isn't it?
Yes.
When you're
Yeah.
either level on score or above on score. And you don't always want that.
That can be clutch, but it's kind of clutch in some games. It's not clutch in every game, and I think Invaders is. When I play Nick Fury as a leader, I see Eye in the Sky as the leadership because it's so strong.
The fact that comes back every game.
And I mean, with Namor, if you take Nick Fury, you get Eye in the Sky back still because it's a S.H.I.E.L.D affiliated, so he doesn't have to be the leader. So actually, you get double kind of leaderships as I view it.
I think you're completely right there. Eye in the Sky is incredibly powerful. It's like, as long as Nick Fury is safe, it feels like a permanent fallback.
Yes.
We all know how powerful fallback is. It's recently become a restricted card, for good reason. The fact that you've got that affiliated and every turn potentially while Nick's around, to couple that with the Namor reroll as well.
Yeah.
Very good.
So as a core, I guess it all depends on the crises, but I'm a big fan of Nick Fury. I think he is really good at damage, surprisingly, because of the grunts. The grunts are quite good damage dealers, and Nick Fury has a pierce on both of his builder and his gainer. He's got Eye in the Sky, and the grunts have excellent extract play. So I love playing Nick Fury. I also love playing Spectacular Spider-Man because he's amazing. Well, sorry, he's spectacular. He's really, he just does what he wants. He's also affiliated, which helps. And then I will try and play Namor more often than not. Although sometimes if I need to go wider, I'll not take the 5 threat and just take a 3 and a 2, for example.
I really like Nick Fury. He is a great option, even not as your leader. I think his stock has really improved since the most recent rotation, or the recent large rotation.
I agree.
There are fewer safe grabs in the game.
Yeah.
So the fact that the grunts can go up and pick up an extract, and if they get dazed, they still pass it back to you. So it's like a pseudo safe grab in that sense. But also in that same activation, Nick can go up and pick another one up, meaning if you've got priority, you don't just get 1 extract up, you get 2 extracts up in that first turn, and you've got 2 odd number extracts in your roster, meaning that if you've got prio and you ended up choosing your extracts, or they've got similar extracts, you can take the center and a side one, or even potentially threaten elsewhere. It just frees things up so much more. And Nick can do that as a splash character now, and because there are fewer of those available in the game, he's just a lot better.
And actually, one thing that really drew me to S.H.I.E.L.D, especially given the recent changes, is their extract game is really strong. I think a lot of the time people talk about secure games being strong, and actually winning kind of secures. After round 1, winning secures is kind of really important, and there's a lot of teams that are set up for that. But actually, what I love about S.H.I.E.L.D is they're really strong on the extracts, because you've got Nick Fury, as you've just talked about, but you've also got the Black Widow, who does a similar thing.
Of course.
She grabs an extract, and then if she gets dazed, she drops it where she wants to. That can come in absolutely clutch in games, because it can really stop, even if your character's getting dazed, it stops that point swing. And then you've got Namor in S.H.I.E.L.D as well, who can make people drop objectives. So that's another really useful thing to do. And then generally, the S.H.I.E.L.D characters that I have are reasonably good at hitting. They're pretty tanky, they're pretty mobile, and also the cards help keep them around and keep them mobile. So that's kind of a really nice thing for the extract runners.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think with your mobility as well from your Eye in the Sky S.H.I.E.L.D mobile, actually, your turn 1, turn 2 plays, scooping up all those extracts and protecting them is really, really strong under S.H.I.E.L.D. And you've still got enough characters in the likes of Namor and Nick and Agent Venom as well, who can deal out damage and fight and reliably take out an activation of your opponent to make it harder for them to take those extracts off those characters who are, protecting them. So that's, really powerful. You've got two splash characters that we alluded to. You've got Black Panther, Chosen of the Bast, and Dr. Voodoo. First, talk to me about Dr. Voodoo. Why is he in the roster?
So Dr. Voodoo, both actually are relatively late or very late additions in one case. I realised that there's a very limited, in fact, there was no Mystic in my original 10.
Is there an affiliated Mystic threat in S.H.I.E.L.D? I can't think of one. Not one that, immediately comes to mind.
I'm not sure. Not that I can think of, and it's not very S.H.I.E.L.D to be Mystic, I guess.
They're all pistols, aren't they?
Yeah, so Dr. Voodoo, I had Spider-Woman in there for a very long time. She is affiliated and she does the steel stuff and she can interrogate if she has the power, which is rare. But I swapped her out for Dr. Voodoo because his forcing opponents to drop at extracts and then stopping them picking them back up is really good with his brother Daniel. And he is a Mystic dealer and he's pretty good at dealing damage. His damage output is reasonable for a 4 threat. He's got a 5 dice Mystic builder with a trigger for a throw, and then he's got a 7 dicer which whiles do extra damage. So he can actually deal decent damage. He's also a good answer if I have to play against Web Warriors, because Web Warriors hate him because they don't get the rerolls against Mystic. And then there's one character that can pick up extracts, which is really limiting for them. So that's why he came in quite late for Spider-Woman.
Nice. I can see him playing that similar role to Spider-Woman, as a potential steal option. But I completely agree. What Spider-Woman brings is been brought to the fore by other characters, and Voodoo more reliably has the power to do what he needs to do because he's also got that power burn, hasn't he, on his attack, so generates power really, really well.
And if he rolls skulls, he gets power as well. So his power generation that was one of the key things that I always struggled with Spider-Woman, was her power generation was not good enough to do everything she wants to do.
Exactly, and you've got no leadership power generation here. Obviously there's a few of those in the game, and you've got no characters who are passing power around. So she's very much relying on her own ability to gain power or take damage, which is not ideal. No, I think that's a good swap. And given that you've got 8 other affiliated characters, you don't need Spider-Woman.
And I just finished painting Voodoo, so I was quite keen to take him.
Oh, get him on the table. I'm surprised none of your other teammates wanted Voodoo. Obviously, he's a very popular splash. Obviously, less popular after his change, but it's still very, very good.
But like we said, my team, apart from Stefan, who's got the spider foes, my team generally is quite attrition-y. And I think Voodoo really plays more into that extract game. So I guess I'm probably the player that is going a bit wider. And Voodoo is quite important because if I come up against something like Web Warriors, which maybe that will match up just because of my extract specifically, I think I can probably go toe-to-toe with them. Then Voodoo can just push me over the edge to really neuter some of their irritating characters.
Nice. Yeah, I really like it. On something like Paranoia, your opponent has priority. They go up and pick up their first objective. You don't have the same sort of agency as you would if you had priority. That's fine. Nick goes up, picks up 2. Great. Then they go up and pick up the 3rd. Then Voodoo goes up and makes them drop it. Yeah. So, your extract game is very, very good.
So that's the plan with Voodoo. And then my other splash, Black Panther, Chosen of Bast, we discussed this yesterday, and I think it was this morning I decided.
Oh, very late. So this was in response to the crises changes that we were talking about?
Yes. So actually, before we talk about Black Panther, Chosen of Bast, let's talk about the crises, because he's an important facet of that. So my extracts I've had locked in for a long time.
Yeah.
As I've said, I've got pretty good extract play, very good extract play, I think, for S.H.I.E.L.D. That's one of their strengths. And so I've just gone for the highest number of extracts on the table as possible.
So, you've got Senators in there, which is 6 points on the table.
Yeah, Senators, I think, is my favourite for S.H.I.E.L.D. I've got some good early play with that.
Talk me through what your plays are. Why is it your favourite? I would have thought you'd have preferred the odd number ones, but talk me through Senators.
So, whether or not I have priority, I can take Nick and pick up 2 Senators at once. So, normally what I'd do is I'd pick up one with the grunts in my opponent's deployment, and then Nick would sit behind them. And then if my opponent hits the grunts, Nick gains a power because they'll take damage because they're crap defense. But I don't lose that extract, and my opponent has to work doubly hard to gain the extract. But then also I've got the other characters like the Black Widow, who can also steal from my opponents without going too far into enemy territory and potentially tank it. And if she doesn't tank it, she drops it my way and I'm all good. Also, at 19, I can happily go 5 wide. Normally people want to go 6 wide, but I have the grunts to make my 6th character. So I can go 5 wide and keep priority, which can be really important when I'm playing against something like Webs, where they have 6 characters and I want to be able to go first.
Absolutely. You bring Namor in that team as well, or you bring someone like Agent Venom. You go up against Webs and you have priority.
Yeah.
You can go and daze their one character who doesn't have a senator, knowing that then if they take a senator off you, there's no one to pick it up.
Exactly. So it's really good for that. But then similarly, the other two, both on F maps, I can do a similar play. I can steal with either the Black Widow or the grunts, but it's just a bit more risky because you're a bit further into enemy territory. But I still think it's good enough.
I really like the Black Widow doing that deep dive because she usually takes more than 2 attacks to go down. And if they're spending their turn 1 activations on attacking her, they're not spending it on getting a good board position.
Yeah, exactly. She's also got stealth, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, so if you go for the one that's only got 1 or 2 characters near it, if they're going to punish you for doing that move, they need to start moving characters.
The other thing is, if she takes 3 damage, gains 3 power, she can play Shield Mobile, and it doesn't have to be on her activation. And that's a long move, so she can then long move retreat. And so that's really good. So it basically means if your opponent gets close to killing her but doesn't quite kill her, she'll then just run away with your extract.
Yeah, I really like that, which is often quite reliable. I mean, You're looking for that sweet spot. You still need her to take 3, but I've seen the Black Widow just take 1 damage a time. It sets up a nice shield mobile, and she's been back past the centre line again with your opponent's extract.
And that's the thing, is that you are hitting that sweet spot to retreat, but if you... Basically, the worst case scenario is she dazes, but then your opponent's not getting the extract and they're stuck in their deployment zone. So I've had that happen before, where she dazes early, but is still then like really influential for the rest of the game because she is still quite tanky.
Completely agree. Yeah, okay, that's nice.
So they're the extracts. So the extracts were pretty easy. The secures, however, were really difficult.
So you went to a game night last night, didn't you? And as a bit of a practice before list lock, what were the 3 secures that you took that you'd shared with me beforehand that you thought, right, these are my secures?
So let me tell you, let me go back even further.
Oh, right, okay.
So Infinity Formula is obviously in here, and I think that is the one that I've been certain on for a long time. Extra power generation for shield is great. B maps are great because I'm not too clustered, I'm not too wide. Then I decided, okay, my next 2 are going to be D maps. This was my original thinking, D maps. But then Shield's control is not that good. And I think against Webs or Hellfire Club, who are the D map specialists, I just lose. Because they've faster, they've got more control, I just can't keep up with them. And they're not doing attacks to deal the damage that I need to gain the power.
Your mobility is in your ability to respond and move back or move away, not in moving your opponent's characters. So when they get onto those far D points, yes, you can get onto them as well, but then they can just throw you off again. Or, you can't get the right character in the right place and then throw them off. You get less benefit from those D maps, I think.
So then up until last night, where I went to this game night, I'd switched. So I still had Infinity Formula, but I had Gamma Wave and Demons Downtown. So the thinking is that extract game is really good. I sit on an EMAP and I'm not so worried about going wide. However, as you quite rightly pointed out, my attrition game is not as good as others. And I found that in my game night last night. I played against the Crimson Dynamo and it just completely neutered my attrition. And I didn't really have anything to respond to that because my control's not great.
Yeah.
Maybe this is also a good time to talk about why She-Hulk is in the roster. So my thinking with She-Hulk was she can come on an EMAP, and actually I think she in S.H.I.E.L.D. has some decent counter to some of the big bads, because she can go with Namor, they can stand next to each other in the middle, and they can play defensive prototype, which stops them getting moved, essentially. It's a card that S.H.I.E.L.D. play, which stops them getting moved. And it means that, for example, against Asgard, who have lots of energy, this BLT list that's flying around, She-Hulk has actually got 4 dice with 2 rerolls stood next to Namor, and bodyguards Namor, and has aggressive, and can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So this was my thinking. However, I think it still struggles against the big bads, especially outside of 15. I think at 15 I've got a good team. Anywhere else, I'm struggling a little bit more.
I completely concur. I think if I was your opponents trying to pair me up against you, and I saw these EMAPs in your secures, despite these really crisisy lots of extracts in your extracts, and I was a EMAP specialist, super attrition, maybe I was one of these Red Skull Thanos Zemo teams, I would be looking to try and pair myself up against you. And if I won priority, I'd be choosing my extracts. And then fingers crossed, we get researcher and demons, or researcher. And yeah, you're choosing between 19 and 15. That's fine. But we're bang down the middle. You can't play your extract game. We're playing my attrition game. And you're almost handing those specialists that perfect opportunity to go with their extracts. Or even if they don't, you're playing on a secure that's much, much better for them.
Yeah, and it then becomes dicey as to whether I win priority, and that's not really what you want. Yeah, I completely agree. You talked me around, and so we ended up going with what we described as kind of the janky secures that no one really wants to play on.
I love this. I love this thought process. I do think so many times, and a shout out to Danger Room podcast, who have just done a recent tier list on crises, and they talk about how players will often think, right, I'm this type of team, therefore I bring these 3 crises, or I'm this type of team, and therefore I bring these 3 crises, and therefore there are sort of a group of crises in the middle that rarely get played by anyone. And it's not because they're not fun, it's not because they're bad, it's because they're not as polarized as something like Gamma or Demons, or as polarized as well, your extracts with cubes or senators. And it means that people aren't either preparing for them, but also means that they're a little bit at a disadvantage when they play them. And if you can, I think there's a spot in the game whereby if you become an expert at those crises, or your team is more middle-ish or becomes really good at those crises, you can really punish either crisis teams or attrition teams when they play them.
Yeah, I agree. And so we settled on, so Infinity Formula has been stapled still, and actually it kind of falls into that category where it gets underrepresented despite it being a really fun crisis, because it's not it's not an extreme version.
Yeah, Infinity's like good for everyone, isn't it? Everyone gets extra power. There are 4 points, so it's fairly fair. They're like spread out, but could be treated as almost like 2Es. So they could be fighty or they could be crisisy. So Infinity Formula is a very fair scenario. So
and then we've gone Mutant Madman. So again, I like the B shape. I've got a lot of high physical defense, so my pay to flip game is reasonably good. I've got good mobility with the cards, and now I've got Black Panther Chosen of Bast, who is very good at pay to flips because he has the superpower which allows him to reroll any number of dice when trying to flip.
Which is really, really good when you're looking for that second or third success potentially. The fact that he doesn't have to just reroll them all, he can keep his successes and then reroll the extra.
Yes, and it includes skulls. So even if he's getting skulls, it also means potentially he can avoid that mutant damage.
No, that's not on Mutant Madman. Mutant Madman is if...
Oh, sorry, yes, you're right. So you get the damage if you're close to it and your opponent's controlling it. My apologies.
Yeah, but if you were to play someone else's pay to flips, and for instance, Deadly Meteors is the one where the skull would damage you, or Spider Portals, whereby it forces you to be placed or pushed, you can potentially avoid that as well. So that's really good.
But yes, so and then that also brings us on to the final crisis. The final secure is Sword Base, which is essentially a smaller B map. And again, it's got that pay to flip element, which is now a 50-50, but it helps with my mobility with the likes of Namor that can just run around flipping points. Bast is pretty good at that too, with his potential, like essentially it changes your 50-50 to a 1 in 4 if you have enough power.
Yeah, there's a 75% chance. Yeah, absolutely. I like Sword Base because even though you're not the most attrition-y teams, you can really benefit from that cage that gets
Yeah.
essentially slightly smaller than the B map on sword base. So, and what I really, really like about your shield's mobility, the fact that the action economy on a lot of your characters is excellent, whether it's through charges, whether it's through pursuits or movement after attacks. But also, you've got a lot of characters there who are generating power from either rolling certain types of dice or they're generating more power in the power phase, meaning that you've got a lot of flexibility to use your mobility to jump around the points, and you will have the power to flip them. I think Namor is particularly excellent at this, whereby he's getting 2 power in the power phase. He can get a movement off of his builder. But he's also got a charge as well and a long move medium base. So he loves sword base because he can potentially flip 3 in a turn, which is fantastic. Similarly, you've got Black Panther with his ability to re-roll them. Fantastic. But Agent Venom with his place as well.
And Spectacular Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man. Yeah, all these great pay-to-flip characters who can be a real nuisance. Your opponent gets back priority. You don't care. You save one of these characters till the end, and they just go around and flip all the points.
Yeah, for sure. So that is a little summary of my roster. Have you got any other questions before we wrap up this prelude episode?
No, I think it's been really interesting sort of seeing the evolution of the roster. It's interestingly for the listener, it's not a million miles away from that roster that you took to that original team event. However, the way it plays because of those changes is massively different. I think previously the shield that you were playing was that gun line that grabbed extracts, brought them back, and then shot people down as they got close, which was fun. It was interesting. Obviously, you're always playing Nick Fury. I think the Invaders leadership brings a completely different dynamic to it. It means you're not sort of trying to lean into that weird, when do I score points? When do I not score points? How do I use that aggressive, pair power for the aggressive? But actually, you can be a lot more flexible in your gameplay with Namor. And Namor is just such a great character, and you've done such a fantastic paint job on him. I just can't wait for people to see him on the table.
Yeah. That's a big motivation to get him on the table as much as possible, is to get that, because he's such a cool model.
If you haven't seen him, do check out Archie's Instagram, Smeagol's Corner, for pictures of Namor, because you've done some resin work, haven't you, on the base?
Yeah, first time I've done some resin work so that he looks like he's actually in the sea.
And it's so good. And I actually think the paint job you've done on him is one of the best you've done. And you're a good painter. At the Mutant Weekend, you came second or third in the painting competition against some really stiff competition. So you do this comic book style, but the way you painted Namor with his golden skin, it's in your style, but he's still so characterful. He looks like he's been out at sea, on the equator,
on the tanning beds.
On the tanning beds, yeah, absolutely. He's just shaved his chest.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased generally with the job I've done on these guys, the painting I've done on this team. So I'm really excited, regardless of the results, to get these guys on the table and just have good fun.
Well, good luck, Archie. This is obviously,
thank you.
It's a huge event. It's probably the biggest in the MCP calendar.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. Good luck to your team and the other 4 members. I will be rooting for Team Denmark Venom.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'll be following it all the way. I know the Professional Casual Network will be streaming a number of games. They'll be streaming some of the top tables. So I do expect to see Team Denmark Venom on there probably at least 4 out of 6 of the games.
Yeah. But we don't want to take too much of the limelight, so we'll let some other people have it some of the time. But yeah.
Fair. Yeah, they might need to go film, maybe some of the bottom tables, just so you're not on the screen too much.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to go. So to wrap up, I guess, thank you all for listening to this episode, but stay tuned for our sequel episode, which will be after WTC. We'll hopefully get this out before WTC. And then there'll be another one after WTC, which will actually go into detail about the games themselves. And you can hear how the list actually goes. We've done a lot of theory hammering.
Lots of theory hammering. And I can't wait for us to go back on all of that and say what were we thinking?
Yeah, we made a mistake. Yeah. So let's hope that we can put our theory into practice. So before we finish, Curtis, tell us where people can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram. I am simple_edge highlights. You can see some of the characters I've painted up there. But if you want to get in touch with me either on Discord or through other social media, I'm just Curtis H. You'll also see me pop up at events. Probably not too many going forward at the minute, but yeah, Curtis H. How about yourself, Archie?
So yeah, as you said, I'm on Instagram at Smeagol's Corner. I think all of my S.H.I.E.L.D. or most of my S.H.I.E.L.D. characters are now up on the Instagram, so check that out. And I think I'm Archie Cable on Longshanks and Archie RC on Discord. So please do reach out if you want to chat anything about MCP, whether it is competitive game or hobby. I think we're probably more on the hobby side than the competitive side, but we love talking about it.
Hey, I think you're pretty good at this game.
I'm okay. And finally, I'd like to shout out our audio editing whiz, Louis, who's doing a great job on these and saving me a lot of time, which is really nice. And also he does a lot of work on our YouTube channel, so do check that out. It is Cable's Conquests on YouTube. But that is all for this episode. Stay tuned for the next one, part 2. But until next time, keep up the conquest.
The name's Cable. Remember it.